welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. Today, we're going to discuss Mick Foley and his comments about the Vince McMahon Janelle Grant lawsuit, which surprised many people, considering Mick Foley was for a long time an advocate for an organization called RAINN, which is an acronym that stands for Rape, Abuse, Incest, National Network. So, despite his history with this organization and dealing with this population, Mick Foley gave a response that surprised many and upset a lot of people. So let's first talk about that situation, the Janelle Grant lawsuit, and Mick Foley's opinion on it. And then I'll discuss why I think he may have this take on the subject while also having the history as an advocate for women who have been victims of rape and abuse. So first, let's talk about his thoughts. So Mick Foley and Rikishi were at the Northern Ireland Comic Con, and Mick Foley's comments on the upcoming docuseries and his relationship with Vince McMahon, I'm going to truncate this, so I'm not going to read it all. So Mick says that he genuinely liked Vince, and he says, quote, "I think all of us are a combination of good traits and bad traits, and you hope your good traits outweigh your bad traits, and it seems perhaps that Vince got it backwards there for a little while." Then he says that Vince was someone, he says, quote, "He was someone that did the right thing for the right reasons a lot of times. I feel really bad that someone I care about got into something that seems pretty unsavory." He continues by saying he's going to hold off judgment, and that this should not mess with people's memories, and that this situation should not be allowed to mess with your memories. He says, quote, "I don't think many of us are allowing that to mess with our memories. He was instrumental in creating some of those memories, so I'm choosing to appreciate him until I learn more about what may have gone down." So, Mick Foley disappoints the wrestling media, many wrestling fans, with this take, because he used to work for RAINN. So many of you, as you know, the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network hosted Mick Foley for many years. I think this began in maybe 2011. He might have been doing it before then, but in doing just some research, you can actually find that Foley started doing work with RAINN openly in 2011. He logged over 500 hours of volunteering for RAINN. He donated 50% of his royalties for his book, Countdown to Lockdown, to RAINN. And all told, around 2017, 2018, he had raised over $100,000 for RAINN. So a guy who was so entrenched in caring about abused women has seemingly turned his back on abused women, even though I don't believe that's the case. I believe that he's stuck in, between a rock and a hard place. It's somebody he likes in a situation that he cares a lot about. But what many people don't understand is that Mick Foley himself was also accused of rape. He was accused of statutory rape. There was a young lady by the name of Angel Amoroso, who used to be an ECW valet, who accused Mick Foley of raping her, or basically having sex with her while she was underage, in 2017. Now, this was around the time that you don't see that much between Mick Foley and RAINN anymore, around this time. Angel Amoroso did interviews with Shelly Martinez, who used to work in WWE. She was Kevin Thorne's sister. She also worked in TNA. And in that podcast, the two of them talked about various wrestlers and wrestling personalities having sex with underage women, or situations in which they felt like they were attacked. For instance, Shelly Martinez basically says that Umaga almost raped her on a European tour or something to that effect. But Angel Amoroso, she put out many accusations over the years. There was YouTube videos that were posted in which she claimed she started dating Paul Heyman in 1988 when she was only 12 years old. She claimed that she had had sex with Road Dogg, Gentleman Chris Adams, Kevin Von Erich, Brian Pillman, Eddie Gilbert, The Ultimate Warrior, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, Marty Jannetty, Tully Blanchard, Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Sid, and Dave Meltzer, all while she was underage. So in lieu of having those videos to show, I will just read an article from The Inquisitor, which was posted November the 18th, 2017. It says, Angel Amoroso claims that Foley had sex with her in Pennsylvania when she was 15 years old. She also claims that some of his, quote, wrestling friends had sex with her when she was just 12 years old. She states that Foley is a child molester and a pedophile who preys on young girls. At no point during the video does Amoroso drop the names of other wrestlers or even enter the store where Foley's book signing was going on. So this is in response to Angel Amoroso being outside of Mick Foley's book signing, protesting and calling Mick Foley a child molester. This is on video where you can see her with a sign outside of Mick Foley's book signing, calling him a child molester. Now, this article was clearly written before another one of the YouTube videos went up, in which she did name a bunch of wrestlers, just far too many wrestlers, many of whom actually did work in ECW in the early 90s. Again, Angel was in 1988. She would have been 12 or 13 years old. And I know she was there in 1994 because you could find videos of her with Shane Douglas and various guys like that. And many of the guys, if you actually look at the names, like Eddie Gilbert, like Marty Jannetty, like Arn Anderson, like Brian Pillman, you know, some of those guys were around ECW in the early 90s. So, you know, there is some credence to this, but this article was clearly written before that. It says, Foley does not exit the store to confront or speak with her, and he has not released a comment of any kind regarding these accusations. So, I didn't listen to the entire podcast she did with Shelly Martinez. The thing was like an hour and a half. I maybe listened to maybe the first 30 minutes of it. And she believes that the fact that he had not even bothered to deny it is proof that it actually occurred. Well, she also made some Facebook posts that she reposted on Twitter. And this was in 2017. Again, it says, I was asking for it. I deserved it. It was my fault for being a slut and a ring rat. Why am I even bringing it up now? I should just shut the fuck up and kill myself. That's the collective opinion. Hashtag Me Too is a work. Then she posted some of her Facebook comments saying that this is not true for every situation. As a victim of abusers in the business of professional wrestling, I was not believed over my abusers and continue to be harassed about even mentioning that close to 20 wrestlers over the age of 25 had sex with me when I was from the ages of 12 to 17. I was literally told that I was an exception to the rules of rape and statutory rape. She says the laws are different for each individual, I guess, and since, quote, Angel is Angel, what happened to Angel Amoroso doesn't count. I guess I should have used hashtag Me Too instead of hashtag I stand with Angel Amoroso. Then maybe people would have listened to what I've been going publicly insane about for years on social media before any hashtags or Weinstein complaints. So she has been very vocal about this during the era of Me Too, that she was victimized by Mick Foley and a bevy of other wrestlers. Now, for Mick Foley, no doubt he likely believed a lot in the mission of RAINN while he was participating in RAINN, but to be publicly accused of having sex with an underage girl, have media sites, especially pro wrestling sites, pick it up, having them contact WWE, having them contact him, him having to answer for it. To my knowledge, he still hasn't made any public comments about this thing, but just the accusation alone has been psychologically damaging. And that is what being accused of crimes will do to you. So there's, of course, the belief that this young lady might be in some way disturbed, that she might be mentally ill or something to that effect. But regardless of what the outcome is of, who she is or whatever, the question of whether it actually occurred or not never really comes up. Her name is attached to his, if you, of course, care to know what her name is. Mick Foley, for a long time, was considered the nicest guy on earth, sometimes too nice. Nice to the point where there has to be something that he's covering up. And many people, when this whole thing came out initially, was like, yes, we've got it. This is what, the male feminist is always the perpetrator in this situation. But to my knowledge, not too many people have looked into this or even asked any questions about it. But you can tell that this would be a sore subject. For this woman to go on podcast, to go in public and say that Mick Foley was having sex with her when she was 15, and for all this stuff to happen while he's working for RAINN and doing work for women who are raped and sexually abused, and for RAINN, who put Mick Foley on their board at 2011. I don't know when he left the board. I'm having a hell of a time finding out when he left the board. He's not on there anymore. But it was noted that he was put on the board of directors for RAINN in 2011, that he began his work as a volunteer in 2008. So from 2008 till recent memory, he was doing work between WWE and RAINN. He was kind of a liaison between the two. You could actually find Mick Foley hosting raffles and WrestleMania giveaways, all kind of stuff on behalf of RAINN. And then in 2017, you see this. He's been accused of having sex with an underage girl. And while he doesn't seem to work hands-on with RAINN anymore, he did promote RAINN in 2024 when the allegations of Vince McMahon first came out. He suggested anybody that listens to his podcast contact and donate to RAINN if they had been in a similar situation to Janelle Grant. And his comments then were essentially not exactly the same, but were not too far off. Basically, don't let these allegations cloud your memories and all the good things that you remember from the WWE and Vince McMahon himself, but that these things need to be taken seriously, So, in my opinion, of course, this is a very nuanced position and it's a very adult position. Nobody should jump to conclusions, but we already know that online there's an actual cost to not jumping conclusions. There's a reputational cost. People will attack you and think that you're making excuses if you don't jump to the same conclusions they jump to. If you ask any questions, if you try to wait for any extra information, well, then you're on the wrong side of history. Well, look, you're assuming that history is going to go your way. I choose not to do that. I choose to be on this, to wait until we have as much information as possible, and then we make a decision. We're not near the end of how much information is going to come out of this thing. And it may make things worse. It may not. We don't know. But Mick Foley having gone through this thing where he's been accused of having sex with an underage girl, and some people just chose to believe it. Some people ignored it, which, is not exactly the right thing to do either. But it is what it is. That's just kind of what occurred at the time. But for me, when I saw everybody attacking Mick Foley online, I said, did any of these people know that Mick Foley was also accused of doing some dastardly stuff online and in person by somebody? And of course he's saying it didn't happen, it didn't occur. And nobody, well, most people ignored it again, but how many people are going to read this, listen to this, and then believe it? How many people are going to contact this girl and believe it? There's people who believe that he had sex with an underage girl. So these questions float, and these accusations, they stay in the air forever. They pollute the public consciousness. And so taking a wait and see approach is probably the best thing to do. Now, his greater point, which is to not let this sort of negativity affect your memories of someone, specifically events and all the memories that he brought to the WWE. That's an interesting point, because you do have to ask the question, and I guess you have to ask this question every time something happens to somebody, or they get involved with criminal behavior. Does the memories, is that greater than some of the crimes, I guess you could say, people are accused of? Me being a super fan of the WWF since I was a child, if Vince McMahon did any of this stuff, he should be in prison. But I would still find him to be an entertaining guy on television. Just like even I may still find Chris Benoit somewhat entertaining on television. Doesn't mean that he's not an ain't shit human being. I still find some Jimmy Snuka matches to be entertaining. I don't let that stuff affect me personally or affect my ability to watch the product, but it undoubtedly does. If you have any sort of humanity, it does. You know, a Jimmy Snuka match is different. A Chris Benoit match is different. You know, but there's still people who listen to R. Kelly and still think R. Kelly should be in prison. And they're right. You should say, look, if this guy did it, punish him, but I'm not going to stop liking Roddy Piper hitting Jimmy Snuka in the head with a coconut, just because Jimmy Snuka may or may not have killed his girlfriend, even though it's leaning very heavily towards he probably did. All right, because, I mean, do you stop liking Mike Tyson fights because Mike Tyson was, found guilty of rape? Does all the people who listen to Tupac songs not like Tupac because he was found guilty of rape? These are questions that are interesting questions, because a lot of it, your moral betters, the people who stand on the soapbox and tell you how you should react about everything, they don't have this kind of reaction for every situation. Again, Tupac is a very sensitive subject. Tell these people Tupac went to jail for rape, and then ask them, do they listen to Tupac records? Yes, they do. Some of them will even believe all women, and then will say Tupac didn't do anything, even though the girl say he did. Well, technically the girl didn't say that. Let me back up. In any event, he went to jail for rape. Mike Tyson went to jail for rape. When Mike Tyson was on AEW, some people spoke about it, but most people were kind of like, well, he served his time. It's over. Mike Tyson has changed his ways. He's a completely different person today than he was then. These kinds of situations happen, but the memory of Iron Mike, Kid Dynamite, will stick with you forever, regardless of what he did outside the ring. And I think the same will be for Vince McMahon. I think people will remember him more for the stuff he did inside the ring and on television, because millions of people grew up watching his product. But everybody will be affected if all this stuff comes out to be true. So then you have to delineate. You have to separate yourself as a fan, and you separate yourself as a man. As a man, you cannot condone this behavior. But as a fan, you can say, he might be a piece of shit, but the dude was funny. The dude was entertaining. He had to do none of this stuff. And sometimes that's what you got to do. As a matter of fact, that's almost 100% what you have to do, because I'm pretty sure your favorite writer, movie star, artist has been involved with some stuff that you do not condone. It might not be as bad as, sex trafficking, but it's still some pretty bad people doing some pretty bad stuff and creating good art. You might not know about it now. You may find out about it later. A lot of people who are in love with Neil Gaiman are finding out about that right now. I mean, the people who love Sandman and American Gods are hearing these stories about Neil Gaiman being a rapist or taking advantage of the nanny and all this kind of stuff and trying to figure out how that fits into their fandom. It's like, well, you can condemn the behavior and not affect your enjoyment of the art. You have to, actually. Unless you're going to burn all your books, which you could do. It's not the most intelligent thing in the world, but you could do it. Now, in terms of Mick Foley's reaction and the reaction of the people who are judging him, because they expect that because he spent so many years working for RAINN and doing all this charity work, that he should just naturally be a pit bull and be a weapon and attack. Because, but it's an interesting thing because there's guys that are universally liked by wrestling fans. Mick Foley is one of them. Bryan Danielson is another one. John Cena is another one. And all three of those guys basically had a similar response. I love Vince, had a great relationship with Vince. I hope this stuff isn't true. Wait and see approach kind of thing. And people continually are disappointed by that. Everybody expects the response to be Bret Hart, who hated the guy anyway, and is looking for any opportunity to dig his fingers into a wound. Not everybody is willing to do that. Most people are kind of like, yeah, we'll take a wait and see approach, which is the way, it's a sensible way of doing things. You don't have to have an opinion right now. You can look at the story and say, oh my God, it sounds terrible. And it could get worse. But then again, you've only really seen one side of the story. But ultimately, you have to make the decision. It's an independent decision to whether you're going to separate the art from the artist. You're going to separate your memories from what's going on in reality. That's up to you. But let me know what you guys think. And I'll talk to you guys later.
No one does it better.